How's it going, everyone? This is Kay, and it's that time of year again. 2021 is around the corner, and if you thought 2020 had godly servants like Scotty, Shi Huang, BB, well, you've seen nothing yet, because we're gonna get some of the best servants in FGO next year. We're going to receive about 16 new 5-stars. For this list, I'll break down the top 5 SSR servants you should summon in 2021. Keep in mind, if I didn't recommend a specific servant, that doesn't mean they suck. Also, this list doesn't really have an order to it, so there's no ranking among these 5 recommendations, since servants are drastically different. Before we begin, let's start with our 2 honorable mentions. Servants that are top tier and I think you should summon them, but isn't as required compared to the ones on the list. Rhaenys is basically the closest servant you'll get to a waiver. Her skills are very similar to his, possessing team NP batteries, attack and defense buffs, damage cut, and her NP has an AoE defense debuff. She also offers some of her own unique abilities, such as a targetable invincibility buff for 2 hits, greatly helping a servant with survivability, and her NP disables class disadvantage for your team when taking attacks, turning all effective damage into neutral damage. This is a powerful tool to help your berserkers survive. Rhaenys post-upgrade can charge someone's NP gauge up to 50% instantly. Only 3 other servants can do this, Waver, Scotty, and Castoria. That NP charging alone is a powerful tool and is one of the main reasons why Waver, for example, till this day is considered one of the best supports in FGO. The reason why Rhaenys gets an honorable mention instead of being on the list is because she is slightly inferior to Waver. Now, that's not a bad thing. She's being compared to, as mentioned, one of the best supports in FGO. I also mentioned that she is the closest servant to him. But the main problem is that by now, many players have their own waivers. If you don't have one, then you can get him for free with an SSR ticket in the future. Rhaenys is also limited compared to Waver, who can spook you after all. That also means Waver will most likely have a stronger AoE defense debuff than her since the effect scales with her NP levels. Like, I know a guy who got spooked by Waver 3 freaking times, so it happens. Waver is superior than Rhaenys for multiple reasons. For one, he can charge everyone's NP gauge up to 20%, himself included, which helps a lot and is amazing when using K-scopes for your servants. Then he can apply the 30% charge to someone specific whenever you need to, giving a total of 50% charge for them. Rhaenys, on the other hand, only charges 10% for everyone, so your K-scopes won't exactly work with that alone. What you can do is split her second and third skills, giving a 20% charge to your other 2 servants, but you would lose out on charging someone's NP by 50%. So it's like this. Option 1, split the skills and give a total of 30% charge to 2 servants, or give a 50% charge to 1 while the other 2 gets 10%. Now, because Rhaenys can split 30% charges, it's freaking amazing for free-to-plays because you can charge 100% right away if you have a max limit broken imaginary element, something even Waver can't do. So NP charging comparisons are different enough when comparing Waver and Rhaenys, although Waver has higher overall total charges compared to her. Rhaenys also lacks a team attack buff unlike Waver, since her skill only applies to 1 person, although hers has a higher percentage. She also lacks a crit damage buff. Finally, Waver's NP is far more effective in battle since it can stun, curse, and reduce charge for all enemies. While Rhaenys is unique, the class disadvantage thing is more so for mixed quests, cause you're certainly, for example, not going to bring sabers to an all-archer fight unless you're just crazy. Overall, Rhaenys is a powerful unit. Only reason why she isn't in the top 5 list is because she gets overshadowed by her big bro, who will be easily accessible for everyone in the future. But there's nothing wrong with using both of them, and let's be honest, if Waver never existed, Rhaenys would have been part of the OP caster group, even though she's a rider. For our second honorable mention, Summer Musashi is a highly ranked servant in the game thanks to a certain caster we'll get far into the future. That's the only reason why she's being mentioned, because using her in the Castoria system is insanely good. Think of Musashi as the Zerkerlot or Xiang Yu of arts. Musashi is strictly meant for fast battles and fast kills cause her survivability is shit. Sure, she has a one-hit evade and a guts that gives her 1 HP recovery, but her third skill, also her main attack buff, hits her with a 5k HP loss to merit, which is about 41% of her overall health. She is the definition of a glass cannon. Musashi has amazing NP gains but lacks NP battery, so you'll need support. Again, Castoria is the reason why I'm recommending Musashi, because the combo between them is just so damn good. 3-turn farming, boss rush quests, or just loop her NPs back to back with ease. But I'm sure you're wondering, why not just use the Scotty system with Zerker Lot or Dantes instead? They have their own functions, such as the Scotty system, allowing you to one-shot crit enemies thanks to the plethora of stars your servants generate. But unlike Castoria, Scotty's NP is not as strong. Castoria can play the long game since she can spam her Noble Phantasm, being an arts-focused servant within an arts-focused build. And her NP is amazing thanks to Solemn Defense, attack buffs, and a team debuff cleanse. Each system though has their own strengths and uses. But Castoria covers majority of Summer Musashi's weaknesses such as survivability and NP charges, though she is still squishy and can easily die, but at least it's better. Now, without Castoria, Musashi has a lot of problems. Now, I'm sure you can make some insane combo without Castoria, but how high of an investment must you make? Musashi can certainly 3-turn farm without Castoria, but you'll need something like a Super Scope, Tamamo, Neurobright, and Paracelsus. But with 2 Castorias, you don't even need starting NPs for Musashi to work, allowing you to equip Heaven's Feel or Black Grail for insane NP damage that can surpass NP damage done by the Scotty system. And as a reminder, the Scotty system requires starting NP, such as Super Scope or K-Scope. While Summer Musashi does not require starting NP for most battles, keep in mind she may need it if the enemy gives back low NP refund like Berserkers for example. Summer Musashi with Castoria will be one of the best, if not the best, 3-turn farmer in the game. That itself deserves an honorable mention. Now we can finally start the list. Kama is one of the best assassins in the game, surpassing Jack the Ripper in NP damage if you're not fighting against female enemies of course. While Jack is superior with Stargen and NP spamming, Kama is no slouch in those areas either, having amazing NP gains along with a 50% NP battery. On top of being a strong DPS, she has good utility as well. Though a target will lose 1k max HP, her first skill will heal herself 4k HP. What's notable about the skill is the overcharge buff, which majority of the time you'll use on herself since her NP overcharge buffs her quick before the damage for 3 turns. The quick buff connecting to her NP has good synergy with her ability to spam her Noble Phantasm. If it were to be connected with a skill for example, you'll experience timing issues with cooldowns, but for the buff to be with her main attack means it'll be reliable and consistent. But that's not her only method to increase damage. Her second skill is a powerful combination of offense and survivability. Gut status for one time means it'll never expire until used. That's insanely good, especially on a 6-turn cooldown. Pop this skill early and you can revive her twice in battle, even 3 times if you're lucky, since she can come back with 6k HP, basically half of her overall health if you use her healing skill after revival. Continuing the survivability strengths of the servant, Kama can charm lock enemies. An 80% chance to charm a target is very high. With her third skill, it'll increase the chance, and as an NP spammer, you'll charm consistently. Kama also has a very unique anti-alter ego skill, giving her class advantage over them. Being an assassin, she'll no longer receive effective damage. Instead, Kama will resist their attacks while dealing effective damage to them. You rarely face alter egos, but this ability serves as a true counter against them, as alter egos typically receive neutral damage unless you're using like Berserker or something. Like I mentioned, she has good utility, and I didn't even talk about her being a crit servant. As an assassin with high hit counts, she is a strong star generator, and her third skill also buffs her own crit damage. Basically, here's a servant that can NP spam, is self-sufficient as a crit DPS, is a strong counter to alter egos, has good survivability, and can charm lock enemies. Oh, and since the Skadi system is still broken, Kama fits perfectly with them. It's safe to say, Super Orion is one of the strongest, if not the strongest crit servant in FGO. His buffs are so ridiculously powerful that you don't even need any damage boosting effects for his CEs. He's going to kill enemies regardless. More damage doesn't really do much besides flexing, so this opens up more options, specifically CEs that gives him starting NP like K-Scopes, elements, or aerial drive, all offering good starting NP charges. This is important since Orion needs his NP used from the start, if not as soon as possible, otherwise he can be slow if his NP isn't ready. He's a servant that needs early momentum, but once you have it, he's not slowing down at all. Orion is a simple yet very fun servant to use. Generates stars, uses abilities, and literally one-punch enemies. He has 3 buster attacks and a total of 5 offensive buffs that can be combined. 2 attack buffs, 1 from his skill, another from his NP, a buster buff, a general crits buff, and a freaking insane 100% crit buff whenever you use his busters, which again, he has 3. Basically, his third skill applies a 100% crit buff before the damage when using a buster. The effects last the entire turn, so let's say you use a Buster Quick Arts Brave Chain. That means he gets a minimum of 100% crit buff for all attacks, enhancing crit damage including his arts and quick. Pretty strong, right? You have no freaking idea. If he uses a Buster Brave Chain, his last buster attack will have a 300 crit damage boost. Not to mention, if you use his Noble Phantasm, he gets another 100% crit boost for all attacks. So first buster attack gets a 200 crit buff, second buster is 300, final attack gets an insane 400% boost, and I haven't even added the 50% attack buff and 50% buster buff. So yeah, he deserves to be the strongest crit servant. What's even better is that his third skill can be conserved, meaning if you only use 1 buster this turn, then the skill can still apply for his next 2 turns. It's for 3 buster attacks or 3 turns till the effects expire, but it has a 5-turn cooldown, so pretty short. Now, stay with me, but if you use a double Merlin setup, holy crap, the damage will be outrageously high. Merlin also covers his NP gaining weakness and provides stars for him. I swear, you must really hate the enemy to pull off a double Merlin and Super Orion combo. But it doesn't even stop there. He has Guts for survivability, can gain 20 stars on the spot, and his Noble Phantasm has a max limit broken 2030 effect. The guy even has a debuff immunity to counter any potential damage debuffs that may hinder his attacks. But the best part is, Orion can pierce invincibility, so not even enemies with dodge effects are safe from getting one-punched. Oh, as an added bonus, he has a 12% crit passive, so yeah, the teddy bear is a monster. The third servant you should summon in 2021 is the one and only Davinci Rider. She is one of the best arts servants in the game due to her incredible NP spamming. Nothing new since there are many NP spammers in the game, but what makes Davinci such an asset is that her role is to help other servants spam their NPs at the same time dealing damage. Her Noble Phantasm is an AoE that charges 20% NP for everyone, herself included of course, not to mention her NP refund also applies. What further solidifies her NP spamming is her first skill recharging 20% NP every turn. Davinci's third skill is what makes her an NP support unit, charging everyone's gauge by 10% while increasing their damage and boosting overcharge, helping herself in the process. This is a servant that can constantly use her NP, while doing so allows others to use theirs. You'll have no problem charging her gauge, but servants like Waver, Tamamo, and in the future Castoria are strong party members. Use one of them and a second arts DPS, and you'll use NPs back to back. Her NP damage is also on the low side, so getting her at NP2 will help a lot if you can't afford it, that is. Davinci is also really arts focused, not like you can't put her into other teams, but she solely relies on her Noble Phantasm. That is her purpose in life. So if she's not spamming her NP, then it's not worth using her. Her NP gains with attacks are average, so you'll need arts chains to really charge her gauge, but put her where she belongs, and Davinci becomes one of the most consistent servants ever. A fun team is using her with Tamamo, and trust me, you'll get sick of watching their NPs given how frequent you'll be spamming them. You knew she was on the list. You guys know the big three, right? The ultimate supporters of FGO, Merlin, Skadi, and Castoria. Well, Ishtar is compatible with all three of them due to her unique second skill giving her the ability to change her NP type to whatever you want. Her NP is naturally Arts, so if you're wondering why it's a choice for this skill, it's because it'll increase NP damage as well, so having three options won't force you to change it if you don't want to. Now, she does not replace Dantes in the Skadi system, so don't think he's useless if you get her. Ishtar cannot 3-turn farm with just double Skadi. You'll need a 4th servant to switch into, such as Waver or Narrow Bride. She lacks NP gaining buffs, therefore her refund is low when using Quick. So don't think Ishtar can replace all quick farmers in the game, it's just that she can work with Skadi, receiving quick buffs to make her NP stronger. Skadi is probably the weakest in terms of synergy out of the three because Ishtar only has one quick to use. Merlin is a strong supporter for Ishtar because she can transform herself into a dedicated Buster servant, having 2 Buster normals and being able to change her NP to Buster. Castoria has the strongest synergy with Space Ishtar, and these two will be your typical setup for Art's 3-turn farming. What's amazing is that you don't even need 2 Castorias in order to 3-turn farm. If you have a Waver or at times Helena or Lanling, they can serve as alternatives. Ishtar is pretty self-sufficient, having many skills that increases her damage output. Her first skill buffs not only herself, but your team as well, offering some offensive support. As mentioned, her second skill increases her NP damage, and her third skill can buff her different command cards, but it is based on chance. 80% is pretty high in my opinion, but there were at times where I didn't get it. Also, each buff chance is applied separately, so you may get a buff in Buster and Quick, but not Arts. But the most notable effect is her 50% NP battery, which is just beautiful. Not to mention, she has a lot of passives, one being a 3.5 NP regen every turn thanks to her Avenger class. Her Noble Phantasm is pretty simple, further buffing her NP damage thanks to the overcharge, but it'll also buff her extra attack, which is very unique, making it most ideal to perform Brave Chains with Ishtar. Now, each NP damage is different according to her NP type. Overall, Space Ishtar is an amazing servant thanks to her diversity being able to fit into any team. Quick is the weakest in terms of synergy, then Buster, then to Arts being the most ideal type. I would recommend you getting her at NP2 though. Due to her class, you're going to deal a lot of neutral damage, so you need to increase her NP damage. For me, I was able to 3-turn farm at NP2, so that's a sweet spot. Regardless, everyone should get her because she is a strong farming unit. Even if you don't have the big 3 as supporters, she'll work because again, Space Ishtar can be supported by any type.
世界の歯車は壊れた。今こそ粛清の時。今こそエゴの時。我が会見は悪を断つ。マハープララヤ。
Arjuna Alter is the definition of offensive capabilities, a self-sufficient servant that is insanely strong for both farming and challenge quests. Arjuna is the strongest AoE berserker in FGO. His damage output is close to lower end single target NPs, which says a lot since it is AoE. Arjuna has 3 forms of increasing his damage. His first skill, which gives the standard attack buff, but also further increasing damage when enemies are inflicted by debuffs, which his Noble Phantasm provides, reducing Buster resistance before the damage. He is a very simple servant to use, but a strong ass one. The key to his insane damage output isn't his Noble Phantasm. Don't get me wrong, it's powerful as hell, but it's within his Buster crits. His second skill not only charges his NP gauge, again making him perfect for farming, but his 3 Buster attacks will absorb all stars. With a few supportive offensive buffs, Arjuna's Buster crits can approach beyond 250,000 damage per Buster attack after his NP. It wouldn't be surprising if he can reach over 1 million damage with a NP Buster Brave Chain. Literally, enemies with over 500,000 HP isn't even a problem. As for breakbar enemies, one solid Buster crit will wipe out a good chunk of their HP. As a berserker, he is somewhat of a glass cannon, but thanks to his guts and healing, he can survive longer, but he's still fragile though, especially with stray crits. He isn't perfect either. No invincibility pairs can slow him down when enemies can dodge, especially when you have a perfect NP Buster crit Brave setup. Also, his Buster resist down can miss, and when it does, holy crap does it suck. Build a team with 2 supporters to give him offensive buffs. you must use 2030s or star regen CEs on your supporters, otherwise he can't bust their crits. Arjuna Altar is a servant I'd recommend to everyone. One can argue that he is boring to use, which I can understand. He isn't as fun like Super Orion or unique like Space Ishtar. You literally use his NP and Buster Crit to nuke enemies to death, but whether you're a veteran player or even a beginner, I guarantee you, Arjuna Altar is a reliable asset. So that's the top 5 servants you should summon in 2021. So comment down below to let me know which servants you're going after. It doesn't have to be these top 5 servants I mentioned, or 7 technically with the honorable mentions. Just which servants are you going after next year? Comment down below to let me know. Special thanks to all my patrons and sponsors. If you want to support my channel, check out my Patreon or channel membership. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more Fates content. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and join my Discord server. All links are in the description. Have an awesome day, everyone. Till next time.